incredible benefit. Now, in a natural setting, these mycorrhiza are actually quite common. You commonly find these plants associated with mycorrhiza or bacteria as well. But unfortunately, in our home gardens where we are constantly tilling and amending the soil, we're adding a lot of fertilizers to the soil, this relationship gets disturbed. And we actually find that the soil is quite depleted of these beneficial fungus. Mm-hmm. So these products are meant to sort of reform those relationships with the plants, because it's not only using the fertilizers that can help your plants, because the fertilizers don't always make the nutrients accessible to the plant roots. The nutrient is there, but depending on the type of soil you have, your plant may not actually have access to any of it.
Yeah, we actually learned an interesting fact in class the other day. When you apply a fertilizer, chemical fertilizer, the NPK, so nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, mm-hmm. we actually learned if you apply a fertilizer that contains phosphorus actually only moves within the soil about a centimeter per year. So if you're thinking that you apply a fertilizer, maybe it's a water concentrate,
yeah,
and it's around a tree, for example, it may not even reach the roots of the tree for years. So if you have the mycorrhizal fungi, because they extend the root surface area
quite
farther
far
than the plant, then that just shows you how it helps the plant, gives access to the plant with all those nutrients.
Because when you have the roots there, what they do is they'll pull the nutrients in the direct vicinity away from the soil. So what eventually happens is, much like the potassium or the phosphorus, is nutrients will, by sort of the soil environment, slowly move towards, by leaching and whatnot, back towards the plant. You're going from high concentration to low concentration. But if it's moving too slowly, you need something to actually reach it. And the tree's own root system may not always move fast enough. So having the mycorrhiza is actually really beneficial. I've actually looked on some of the websites that were talking about it, and they were saying that it's not just the nutrients themselves too, but because you're increasing the surface area of your root system for your plant, you're also pulling in a lot more water. And the benefit of this, of having both more nutrients and more water, is you're protecting your whole plant against stress that may happen from, say, drought or cold temperatures, whatnot. You're giving your plant almost a barrier. You're increasing its vigor and its health, so that if there's a major stress that suddenly happens, they've already primed themselves against it. They already built up their stores.
So you could use this product on established plants. It doesn't have to be new plants.
Not at all.
Really? So if I have like a certain plant in my garden right now, I could use this product on it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, you just add it. You move it into the soil. So you can buy whatever product they have out there. I think they're like a granular mix that you can add to your water, and then you pour it in. You actually bought some for your vegetable garden last year, actually.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. It looks like a powder, and the way it works is you apply, I think the type I had, it was about a teaspoon around the base of the plant, and then you water it, and you don't mix it in the soil or anything. It just seeps down on its own.
Yeah. It's actually really useful for when you're doing transplanting as well, and it helps prevent transplant stress, which can happen. A lot of people will use fertilizers to help prevent that, but actually the mycorrhiza is a little bit more beneficial because you don't necessarily have nutrient poor soil to begin with. Your soil is actually probably really good, but it's just getting your roots established really quickly and pulling as much nutrients out of the soil as possible as soon as it's put into the soil, and that'll help it sort of prevent itself against getting stressed out. So you can actually put a little bit in, and I've seen you sprinkle in about like a teaspoon or so when you're doing your planting. Mm-hmm. And you just, after you dig your hole, sprinkle some in or on the root ball itself, and then plant your plant.
And it works that fast. So you can use it on your vegetable garden.
Yep.
I think the key thing to remember with this type of application, as well as it's crucial to, consider more organic methods when using it, because, mycorrhizal form on a more slower level than if you just applied a direct chemical fertilizer. And the chemical fertilizers tend to inhibit or destruct the mycorrhizal fungi. So how I did it in the summer was I did apply a lot of compost on that bed initially, and then I added the mycorrhizal fungi, and I found it was that was enough nutrients for the plants. I did add some kelp meal fertilizer, like a fish fertilizer during the summer, but just kept with that organic method.
Yeah.
Which gives you better results.
I think so too. And you might not necessarily be adding higher concentrations of nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, or other micronutrients to your soil, but you're certainly adding it in a way that is more easily accessible, especially when you add the mycorrhiza. And you're promoting sort of an environment that's beneficial to all the flora within the soil. Mm-hmm. And the soil that we have been using at the in the vegetable garden is actually in need of it. And you noticed there was a marked difference between the plants that you had added the mycorrhiza to compared to some of the other students' plots where they had not.
Well, especially I think the biggest difference was we have our own plots, and then the school has their own plots. Mm-hmm. So I grew a celery root.
Yeah.
And my teacher grew a celery root, and mine were 3 times as large.
That's incredible.
Over his, and I made sure I showed him the mycorrhizal fungi.
Your celery was bigger than his.
Yeah.
It was actually, it was quite impressive. So I was pretty happy with how it turned out.
Yeah.
So I'm actually I grabbed a box from the Congress. We were given a box to try out, and that's what I'm going to be using on my vegetable garden this year at the parks.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say the best time to apply the mycorrhizal fungi is definitely, when we're past the freezing temperatures in the garden.
Yeah.
Just when you standardly plant out, your annuals or your vegetables.
So like late spring, that sort of thing?
Into late May, June.
Yeah.
When the threat of frost is gone.
Yeah, and if you're a little concerned still about how it's going to turn out, I really suggest you, the listener, try it out. And don't try it to all your plants. Just try to, about half of them or a quarter of them, and you'll know that it did really well, and the evidence will be there, especially if you pull the plant out of the ground itself and you take a look and compare what the root systems are like.
Definitely.
Because the root systems, when you have the mycorrhiza, are huge.
Yeah.
Like they are at least double the size of what the roots that you get when you don't use them.
Now, even before you do use it, check which plants it works for, because I know it works for 90% of plants, but things like rhodos and azaleas it won't work for. That's what I've read.
Yeah, for sure.
So just look into that.
That's definitely something I want to read more into, because I think our teacher was saying that there's just one particular type of fungi that has an association, but I don't think that's generally in the mixes that you can buy. So I don't know much about it. I'd like to research it more.
There are certain vegetables that the mycorrhiza don't do anything for, and I'm trying to remember which ones they exactly were, but I don't have the information. I don't have the information with me.
Yeah, I'm sure you could find it online too.
And
whoever's
it'll
interested.
actually tell you, because the box that I have, it actually tells you on the product or on the labeling which it doesn't work for. Okay. And I think it's certain types of brassicas and things like that the mycorrhiza don't have an interaction with.
Brassicas.
Yeah.
Brassicas.
I think maybe cabbage is one of them.
Okay.
But I'm not sure. Certain ones, they actually benefit quite a bit. Maybe it was carrots that they didn't work for either. But I would definitely check it out, see what it's like, because, some they'll work really well for, and some they won't. There are marked differences between, and they'll have different products that are for specific types of plants, because there are different mycorrhiza that work for annuals and vegetables versus, for example, conifers. Conifers have their own very particular types. So make sure that you get the right box for the right types of plants, because you can't just throw it on everything like you would a fertilizer.
Yeah, and just to let the listeners know, this particular company that we